When I turned 18, my stepfather looked me straight in the eye and said, "Bastards don't deserve inheritance." Then he threw me out. No money, no home, no family. For years, I slept under bridges, washed dishes to survive, and thought my life had no meaning. Until one night, a stranger left behind a briefcase that changed everything and revealed a truth darker than I could ever imagine. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Hit like, subscribe, and get ready for a story that'll make you question everything about fate and family. The orders came in a plain manila envelope. No insignia, no name, no return address. Just one word stamped in bold black ink. Classified. That was the first time I saw the name Operation Wilson. When you've been in the military long enough, you learn that classified doesn't just mean important. It means dangerous, dirty, and deniable. The kind of missions no one gets medals for. The kind where, if you die, they tell your family you perished in a training accident. We were flown out to a remote airbase somewhere in the Nevada desert for briefing. The heat shimmered off the tarmac like liquid fire. My unit, 6 men I trusted more than my own blood, waited in a room that smelled of gun oil and stale coffee. Colonel Briggs, a man whose face looked carved from stone, entered without a word. His uniform had no name tag, no rank displayed, just the flag. That alone told us this wasn't standard procedure. He began, "Gentlemen, you've been selected for a high-priority retrieval operation. Codename, Wilson." He tapped a remote, and grainy satellite images flickered on the wall screen, an isolated compound in the middle of what looked like endless sand dunes. This site was once controlled by hostile forces, Briggs continued. Intel suggests they abandoned it, left behind sensitive material that could compromise U.S. national security. Your mission is to secure and extract any surviving data or technology. We asked the usual questions: enemy presence, evacuation plan, chain of command. Briggs answered each one vaguely, never giving full details. That's when I knew this wasn't just about data. Then came the first real red flag. A team from the Department of Energy would be joining us. Not the CIA, not the Pentagon, the Department of Energy. They'd be in full hazmat suits. Private Miller, the youngest of us, raised his hand and said what we were all thinking. "Sir, are we dealing with nuclear material?" Briggs' cold eyes locked on him. "That information is restricted. What you're dealing with is above your clearance level. You follow orders, complete the mission, and come home." "Understood." We nodded, though unease rippled through the room. When the briefing ended, Briggs paused at the door. "Remember, no communication outside your unit. What happens in Wilson stays in Wilson." That night, I called Megan. She was 6 months pregnant, her voice soft but tired. "Just come back to me, Sam," she said. "We'll name him Daniel." I promised her I'd be home before the baby arrived. I promised her we'd be okay. But promises are fragile things on classified missions. As the helicopter blades roared to life the next morning, I remember thinking how the desert looked endless and how small we were against it. We lifted off in total silence, unaware that within 24 hours, none of our lives would ever be the same again. I stared at that note for a long time, reading the words over and over, as if they might change if I just looked hard enough. Bastards don't deserve inheritance. At first, I thought it had to be a sick joke, some twisted birthday prank. But when I looked up, Richard Hale was watching me with that same detached calm he always had, the look of a man explaining a business transaction, not destroying a life. "Is this supposed to mean something?" I asked. My voice was trembling, but I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing fear. "It means," he said slowly, "you're not my son. You never were. And now that you're 18, you're no longer my responsibility. Pack your things. You're leaving this house today." I laughed, a hollow, confused laugh. "You can't be serious." He folded his hands on the desk. "Dead serious. You've lived off me long enough, Owen. You've eaten my food, used my money, and worn clothes you didn't earn. Your mother and I agreed. It's time for you to learn how the world really works." Mom agreed. The words barely made it past my lips. He didn't answer right away. Then he sighed, leaned back, and said, "She understands this is what's best for everyone." I didn't believe him. I couldn't. I ran from the study and found my mother in the kitchen, clutching a dish towel like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes were red. "Mom, please tell me he's lying," I said. "Tell me this isn't happening." Her voice was so soft I could barely hear it. Owen, I tried to stop him. I swear I did. Then say something. Tell him I'm not going anywhere. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. If I fight him, he'll destroy us both. I can't. Can't what? I shouted. Can't protect your own son? That broke her. She covered her mouth and turned away, sobbing silently. And in that moment, I realized she was as trapped as I was, maybe even more. Richard appeared in the doorway, holding a black duffel bag. I packed a few of your things, he said. You can thank me later. I remember the sound of the zipper, harsh, final, the sound of my childhood ending. When I stepped outside, the sky was gray and heavy. Rain had started to fall in thin, cold sheets. I stood there, soaked, staring back at the mansion that had been my home for 11 years. The front lights glowed warm behind the glass, and for a moment, I thought my mother might run out after me. She didn't. Richard's voice echoed from the doorway. You'll thank me one day. The world doesn't owe bastards anything. You either make it or you die trying. Then the door shut. I walked for hours that night, through the rain, past neighborhoods I'd only ever seen from the car window. I didn't have a plan, just a backpack with some clothes, the $40 he'd given me, and a heart that felt like it had been hollowed out. At a bus stop downtown, I sat beside a man playing a guitar. His case was open for coins. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how it starts. I used half my money to buy a bus ticket to the city. Chicago felt like another planet, loud, endless, indifferent. I slept in the station the first night, holding my bag close like it was treasure. By morning, someone had stolen half of what was inside. That was the day I stopped believing in fairness. Over the next few weeks, I drifted from shelter to shelter, sometimes sleeping under bridges or in alleyways. I looked for jobs, anything. But no one wanted to hire a kid with no address, no ID, and no experience. The rejections piled up like bruises. Every time I thought about going back, I remembered Richard's voice, calm and cold. The world doesn't owe bastards anything. So I stopped hoping for help. I started learning how to survive, how to eat from dumpsters without shame, how to sleep with one eye open, how to keep my head down when danger walked by. The city had a way of sanding you down until you forgot what softness felt like. But I told myself one thing. I wouldn't let Richard be right. I wouldn't die trying. I'd live, even if it meant clawing through dirt to do it. What I didn't know then was that the same world that left me starving would one day hand me a test. One that would change everything I thought I knew about family, truth, and fate. Those first few weeks on the streets blurred together, nights of cold concrete and the taste of metal in the air. I used to think hunger was just emptiness, but it's not. Hunger has a sound. It hums in your ears and scrapes at your ribs until it feels like your bones are hollow drums. I wandered the city by day, trying to look like I belonged somewhere. I'd stand in front of convenience stores, pretending to check my phone, waiting for the smell of coffee to fade so the craving didn't eat me alive. When people dropped change near me, I told myself they weren't pitying me. They were investing in me. Lies like that keep you from breaking. Shelters came and went. Some were full, others closed for maintenance. You learn quickly that rules change depending on who's watching. I met kids younger than me, men older than my grandfather, and women who spoke like ghosts. Every one of them had a story that started the same way. Someone they trusted stopped caring. I found an alley behind a bakery that tossed out bread every night at closing. The manager knew, and he looked the other way. For a while, that was enough. But winter doesn't care about small mercies. When the snow came, I tried sleeping near the heating vents behind restaurants. Some nights, I'd wake up to shouting, sometimes kicks. Other times, it was just silence, the kind that feels too heavy, like even the city had given up on you. Then one night, I met Ben. He was sitting under a bridge, near a fire made from broken pallets. His coat was old army green, his face weathered like driftwood. He saw me shivering across the street and waved me over. Come on, kid. You look like death trying to learn how to walk. I hesitated. Everyone says don't trust strangers. But his eyes weren't sharp like most. They were tired, kind, the kind that had seen too much and still cared anyway. He handed me half a sandwich and a dented metal cup of coffee. I don't think anything in my life ever tasted as good as that stale bread and cold meat. Ben had been a Marine, or so he said. Lost everything after his wife died. Job, house, will to live. But the thing about rock bottom, he told me, is it's solid. You can build from there. He taught me little things that meant survival. How to find warm grates, which shelters didn't steal from you, which churches served soup that wasn't watered down. He told me never to sleep all the way. Keep one ear open, one hand on your pack. But the most important thing he ever said was one night when the wind cut like knives through the cracks of the bridge. I was staring at the flames, angry at everything. Angry at Richard, at my mom, at life. Ben noticed. You can hate them all you want, he said, but hate doesn't keep you warm. It just eats the part of you that still wants to try. I didn't answer. I didn't have words for the storm inside me. But that night, something shifted. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about tomorrow. We made it through most of that winter together. But one morning, I woke up and Ben didn't. His body was still, his face peaceful. The city workers came, zipped him in a black bag, and that was it. No ceremony, no name tag, no one to remember him but me. I stood there long after they left, the frost biting at my skin. I whispered, "You built something, Ben." You did. After that, I promised myself that if I ever got out of that life, I'd remember what he taught me, not to let the world decide who I was. It took months before things changed. I started going to a soup kitchen where a volunteer named Jackie let me wash dishes for extra bread. She liked my work ethic and gave my name to her cousin, who managed a small diner on the edge of downtown. That's how I met Tony, the night manager, ex-mechanic, chain smoker, cynical but decent. He looked me over once and said, "You look like hell, kid, but you can hold a sponge, right?" I nodded. He handed me an apron. "Welcome to paradise. The pay sucks, the customers are worse, but it's warm. Don't steal the pie, and we'll get along fine." That was my first real job. The first night I worked there, I stayed until almost 3 a.m., scrubbing pans until my fingers blistered. It didn't matter. I had a place to stand, a reason to show up. Every morning after that, I'd walk to work, passing the same luxury cars that reminded me of the world I'd lost. But something in me had hardened, not in a cruel way, just in a way that meant I could survive. Maria, the cook, took pity on me. She'd wrap leftover food in foil and slip it into my pocket when Tony wasn't looking. She called me kid, even though I was probably 20 by then. Life wasn't good, but it was stable, and after years on the streets, stability feels like winning the lottery. I'd stand by the sink, watching customers laugh and eat under the neon lights, wondering if they knew how lucky they were, wondering if they'd ever slept on concrete and prayed for a warm plate of fries. I thought I'd found my rhythm, invisible, consistent, safe. But fate doesn't like stability. Fate waits until you stop looking over your shoulder, and that's when it tests you. Because one night, near closing, a man walked into that diner who didn't look like he belonged there. Expensive suit, calm smile, the kind of quiet that makes you uneasy without knowing why. He ordered a black coffee, left $100 tip, and a black briefcase beside his seat. When I found it later that night, after everyone had gone home, I had no idea that inside that briefcase was the key to every mystery that had haunted my life, and that opening it would lead me straight back to the man who'd thrown me away. People think dishwashing is simple, just soap, water, and a bit of elbow grease. But when you do it long enough, it becomes a rhythm, a strange, hypnotic kind of meditation. The hiss of the sprayer, the clatter of plates, the endless steam that fogs your glasses, it drowns out the noise in your head. That was my life for years. Every day, I'd show up before sunrise, tie my faded apron, and lose myself behind the kitchen doors. The waitresses would gossip, the fryers would hiss, and the customers' laughter would echo through the thin wall that separated their world from mine. I didn't mind. I'd stopped needing attention. Silence was safer than conversation. Maria, the cook, liked to hum old Mexican ballads while flipping pancakes. She'd wink at me and say, "Smile, kid. You look like you're scrubbing away your soul." Tony, the manager, smoked like a chimney and barked at everyone, but he was fair. "You do your job, I don't care who you are," he'd say. That's more than I can say for most. The pay wasn't great, barely enough for a room in a rundown building above a laundromat, but I was grateful. After years of sleeping on sidewalks, for walls felt like luxury. My room was small, one bed, a flickering lamp, and a single window that looked out at an alley full of trash cans. But it was mine. I could lock the door. I could breathe. Every night after work, I'd walk home through the same streets, past the same neon signs, the same cracked sidewalks. Routine became comfort. Predictability was peace. Until that night. It was a Wednesday. Quiet, almost too quiet. The diner's lights buzzed faintly against the darkness outside. We were 10 minutes from closing when he walked in. The man who would change everything. He didn't belong in that place. Everything about him screamed money. Perfectly pressed charcoal suit, expensive shoes, a silver watch that caught the light when he lifted his coffee cup. But what struck me most were his eyes, calm, almost calculating, like he was taking notes on everything and everyone. Coffee. Black, he said. His voice was low, even, with a faint accent I couldn't place. Maria whispered to me, "What's a man like that doing here at midnight?" He sat in the corner booth, sipping slowly, staring out the window as if waiting for something or someone. After 15 minutes, he stood, left $100 bill under his cup, and walked out without another word. Tony whistled when he saw the tip. "Guess you're not the only one who appreciates your dishwashing, kid." We laughed, locked up, and left. But as I was wiping down the counter for the last time, I noticed something near the booth, a black briefcase. I called out to Tony, who was already halfway out the door. "Hey, someone left this behind." He turned, shrugged. "Probably that rich guy. Leave it in the office. If he comes back, we'll return it." I nodded, but as I picked it up, something in me hesitated. It was heavier than it looked, and the handle was worn smooth, like it had been carried for years. That night, after everyone left, I sat at the counter, the briefcase in front of me. My reflection stared back from the metal clasps. I knew I shouldn't open it. But curiosity has a way of whispering louder than reason. What if it had an ID? A phone number? Something to help me return it? My heart pounded as I undid the latches. The hinges creaked softly, the sound almost lost beneath the hum of the refrigerator. Inside, neat stacks of paper, not documents, not files, bearer bonds. Dozens of them, each one worth millions. And on top of them, a single white envelope. Written in bold black ink were the words, "For the honest person who finds this." For a long moment, I just sat there, staring. My hands trembled. My brain tried to make sense of what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. None of it did. I picked up the envelope, feeling the texture of expensive paper, and slid a finger under the seal. Inside was a letter, short, precise, and terrifyingly calm. "If you are reading this, you've already faced temptation. What you do next defines you. Take these to the police, or call the number below. Choose carefully." At the bottom was a phone number. No name. The diner was silent. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the wall clock, my own heartbeat in my ears. Then the phone behind the counter rang. I froze. No one should have been calling at that hour. I picked it up. "Hello." A calm male voice answered, one I recognized instantly, the man from the booth. "Congratulations, Owen," he said. "You passed the test." My breath caught. "How do you know my name?" He chuckled softly. "Because your father left you something. And now, it's time you learned the truth." Before I could say anything, he spoke 6 words that made my blood run cold. Words that would change everything I thought I knew about my life. Richard Hale was never your enemy. The line went dead before I could speak. I stood there, gripping the receiver, my pulse racing like a drumbeat in my ears. The diner was empty except for me, the hum of the lights, and that black briefcase sitting like a ghost on the counter. Richard Hale was never your enemy. The words echoed in my mind, circling like vultures. My stepfather's name, the man who'd called me a bastard and thrown me out on my 18th birthday, spoken with such calm authority by a stranger who somehow knew my name. I sank onto one of the stools, my hands shaking. Who was that man? How did he know Richard Hale? And what did he mean by pass the test? I opened the briefcase again, half expecting the contents to vanish like smoke. But the bearer bonds were still there, perfectly stacked, untouched, worth more money than I could ever imagine. $45 million. It didn't feel real. I wanted to believe it was a prank, some elaborate setup, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Nothing about that man had felt accidental. The letter, the bonds, the call, it all felt orchestrated. I shoved the briefcase under the counter, locked the diner door, and sat in silence. My reflection stared back from the window, tired eyes, worn clothes, a man who'd spent years invisible to the world. Now, somehow, the world had decided to notice me. The next morning, I called the number on the letter. My hands trembled as I punched the digits. It rang once, twice. Then, that same calm voice answered. I was wondering when you'd call, he said. Who are you? I demanded. What is this? Why do you know my stepfather? There was a brief silence. Then, my name isn't important, Owen. What matters is that your life was never what you thought it was. Your stepfather hated you because of something your real father did, something that almost cost this country billions. I froze. My real father? Yes, the man said softly. Didn't you ever wonder why Richard Hale married your mother so quickly after your birth? Why your birth certificate was sealed? I felt my throat tighten. He said my dad died before I was born. The man chuckled, though it wasn't cruel. That's the story Richard wanted you to believe. But the truth is, your father is alive. And the money in that briefcase? It's part of what he once protected. My mind reeled. Protected? What do you mean? He sighed, as though deciding how much to tell me. Your father worked for an intelligence division that handled classified assets, including bearer bonds used for covert operations. Years ago, someone within the agency tried to steal them. Your father stopped the theft, but at a terrible cost. He vanished before the fallout. People thought he betrayed the country, but he was trying to keep those assets out of the wrong hands. And my stepfather? I asked. He was one of the investigators on the case. He believed your father was the thief. He married your mother to get close to the evidence, and to you. He thought your mother knew where your father hid the money. When she died, his hatred turned toward you. The world tilted. My vision blurred for a second. So, all these years, he thought I was protecting a thief? Yes, the voice said quietly. He thought you were your father's son in every way, loyal to a criminal. He didn't know you were innocent. But I did. I've been watching you, Owen, waiting to see what kind of man you'd become. I swallowed hard. And the briefcase? That, the man said, was the final test. To see whether you'd take what wasn't yours, or do the right thing. I stared at the bonds spread across the counter. My stomach churned. So what now? You'll meet me, he said. Tomorrow noon. At the old railway station on Brookside Avenue. Bring the briefcase. You'll learn everything. Then the line went dead again. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind against the window made me jump. My thoughts twisted between fear and curiosity. Could it be true? Could my real father still be alive? And if he was, why had he never come for me? I stared at the briefcase on the table until sunrise. Eventually, I decided to go. Not because I trusted the voice, but because I needed answers. When I got to the railway station, it was nearly deserted. Dust floated in the sunlight, slanting through the broken roof. The smell of rust and oil hung thick in the air. A man stood by one of the old benches, hands clasped behind his back. He wore a dark coat, neat, calm, the same man from the diner. Owen, he said, smiling faintly. You kept your word. I set the briefcase on the bench. You said you'd tell me the truth. I will. He glanced around. But first, I need to tell you what happened the night you were born. He reached into his coat and pulled out an old photograph. Faded, creased, but unmistakable. It was my mother. Younger, happier. And next to her, a man with my eyes. My voice cracked. That's him, isn't it? My father. The man nodded. His name is Jonathan Reed. He was one of the best operatives we ever had. He disappeared after exposing corruption inside the agency, and Richard Hale was part of that corruption. I staggered back, my breath catching. No, that's not possible. It is, he said. Hale made your life hell because your father ruined his career. He wasn't punishing a bastard, Owen. He was punishing the living reminder of his own failure. My world stopped. Everything, the years of anger, the words, the homelessness, suddenly made sense. The man's voice softened. Your father didn't die, Owen. He's been in hiding. And now he wants to see you. I felt my knees weaken. Where is he? The man smiled faintly. Closer than you think. The man's words hung in the dusty air like a thunderclap. He's closer than you think. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. What do you mean? I whispered. He gestured toward the far end of the platform. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Older, gray streaks in his hair, but his posture was steady, his presence calm and deliberate. When he looked up, I saw my own eyes staring back at me. Owen, he said softly. His voice cracked just a little, but it was enough. I couldn't move. My legs felt like concrete. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 different ways, but none of them felt like this. None of them had this mix of awe, anger, confusion, and raw grief. Finally, I managed to speak. You're alive. He nodded. I am. And I've waited a long time to see you. I stepped closer, the sound of my boots echoing in the vast, empty hall. You let me believe you were dead. You left me with him. You have any idea what he did to me? My father's eyes darkened with guilt. I know, son. I know every word he said to you. Every wound he gave you. And that's why I couldn't come back until it was safe. Safe. I laughed bitterly. I was homeless, Dad. I lived on the streets while you were out there, hiding. He took a deep breath. It wasn't hiding. It was survival, for both of us. If I had come back, they would have used you to get to me. Richard Hale wasn't just angry. He was dangerous. He had connections inside the same network I exposed. I clenched my fists. Then why now? Why show up after all these years? Because you were ready, he said quietly. The briefcase, that was mine. The man who gave it to you works with me. We wanted to see who you truly were when no one was watching. I felt dizzy. So this was a test? He nodded. Yes. Not to see if you'd take the money, but to see if you still had integrity after everything life stole from you. And you did, Owen. You passed. I shook my head, half in disbelief, half in fury. You had to test me? You couldn't just trust your own son? My father's face softened, and for the first time, I saw pain there. Not the cold calculation of a spy or the distance of a stranger, but genuine sorrow. When you've lived in a world built on lies, he said, trust isn't given. It's proven. And I needed to be sure you were the man your mother believed you'd become. Hearing her name broke something inside me. Mom, I said quietly. She died thinking you betrayed us. He closed his eyes for a moment. I know. That's the burden I'll carry for the rest of my life. But she also left you something I couldn't let Hale destroy. He reached into his coat and handed me a small, worn envelope. My name was written on the front in my mother's handwriting. My throat tightened as I opened it. Inside was a folded note, yellowed with age. My sweet Owen, if you ever read this, know that no matter what people say about your father, he loved us both more than his own life. If you ever feel lost, remember, the truth always finds its way home. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed the letter to my chest. She knew. Yes, he said softly. And she believed in you. For the first time in years, I couldn't find words. All the anger that had kept me alive, the rage at my stepfather, the bitterness toward the world, suddenly felt heavy and meaningless. But there was still one question I needed answered. What about Hale? I asked. He said bastards don't deserve inheritance. Was that about you? My father nodded grimly. Yes. He found out you weren't his blood. He thought your mother cheated, that she'd betrayed him. When he realized who your real father was, his resentment turned into obsession. He blamed me for ruining his career, and he blamed you for existing. I stared at the ground, memories flashing, the insults, the fists, the night he threw me out. Every cruelty now made a horrifying kind of sense. He wanted to erase me, I said quietly. My father's jaw tightened, and he almost did. He placed a hand on my shoulder, hesitant at first, then firm. But you survived. You didn't let his hatred define you. You kept your integrity even when you had nothing. That's what made you stronger than both of us. I felt something shift inside me, a strange, almost painful calm. For years, I'd carried anger like armor. Now, for the first time, I didn't need it. I looked up at him. So what happens now? You just disappear again. He shook his head. No. The bonds will be returned to the agency. They were never about money. They were bait, proof that corruption still exists. But you, Owen, you're living proof that the next generation doesn't have to repeat our mistakes. He pulled out a small folder and handed it to me. Inside were documents, a new identity, a bank account, a clean start. I don't want your money, I said immediately. He smiled faintly. It's not money. It's freedom. Use it to build something real, something honest. Maybe even help others who've been forgotten, like you once were. I looked at the folder, then at him. And you? What will you do? He looked toward the distant horizon where sunlight cut through the dusty glass. There's still work to be done, but I'll find you again, when the time is right. He started to walk away, his footsteps echoing down the platform. Dad, I called out. He turned, and for a moment, time froze. Was any of this real? I asked. The test, the money, the phone call, all of it. He smiled, small, proud, and impossibly sad. All of it, he said. Every choice you made was yours. That's what makes it real. And then he was gone. I stood there alone, the briefcase still beside me, the morning sun breaking through the broken roof. For the first time in years, I didn't feel lost. For the first time, I knew who I was. I walked out of the old railway station carrying the briefcase, the morning sun bleeding gold across the sky. For years, I'd believed my life was just a series of misfortunes, an unwanted son, a broken home, a man forgotten by the world. But as I stepped into that light, I realized something. Everything that had destroyed me had also shaped me. Every night I spent sleeping on the streets, every insult, every bruise, it all led me here. To the truth, I didn't take the money. Instead, I did exactly what the letter asked. I brought the bearer bonds to the authorities, not because I wanted to be a hero, but because I was done living in the shadows of other people's lies. When I handed the briefcase over, the agent who received it looked at me with quiet respect. "Do you know what you just gave up?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Yeah, but for the first time, it feels like I finally own something, my integrity." He nodded. "Your father would be proud." Those words stayed with me. Weeks passed. Life slowly returned to something like normal. I went back to work at the diner for a while. Tony couldn't believe the story when I told him a sanitized version of it. No spies, no millions, just a man from my past who helped me get back on my feet. Maria laughed and said, "See? I told you something good would come from that sad face." I started saving money, moved out of the room above the laundromat and into a small apartment. Nothing fancy, just clean walls, warm light, a sense of peace. Sometimes I'd catch myself wondering where my father was, what missions he might still be involved in. But I didn't need to chase him anymore. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to rescue me. I was my own rescue. One evening, a small envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just my name, written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single photograph, me and my father on the day at the station, taken from a distance. And a note beneath it. "Keep walking the honest path, son. You're the proof that truth survives. Gr." I smiled. There were no tears this time, just quiet understanding. I framed that photograph and placed it by my window. Whenever I look at it, I don't see spies or secrets. I see a man who finally understood that the worth of a person isn't in bloodlines or inheritance or power. It's in the choices we make when no one's watching. As months turned into years, I left the diner and started something new, a nonprofit that helps kids aging out of foster care and shelters. I called it Second Light because everyone deserves another chance to find their way out of the dark. Sometimes when I tell my story to those kids, I see the same haunted look I once saw in the mirror, that disbelief that life can ever be kind again. And I tell them, you don't need to be born lucky to matter. You just need to keep doing the right thing, even when nobody notices. It's not an easy life, but it's a real one. There are still nights when I dream of my stepfather, Richard Hale, the man who threw me out with nothing but hatred in his eyes. For a long time, I thought I wanted revenge. But now, I understand something deeper. Hatred is just pain that's forgotten how to heal. He carried his until it poisoned him, and I almost let it poison me too. But I chose to stop that cycle. That's my real inheritance, the power to choose a different ending. Sometimes I walk back to that old railway station. It's abandoned now, overgrown with vines. But I sit on the same bench where I met my father and listen to the wind rustling through the rafters. It reminds me of the words that started it all. "Congratulations, you passed the test." Back then, I thought the test was about money. Now I know. It was about character. The briefcase was never a reward. It was a mirror. It showed me who I really was when faced with temptation. And when I look back at that moment, I don't see a homeless dishwasher anymore. I see a man who chose honesty when the world expected corruption. So if you're watching this right now, maybe my story isn't just about me. Maybe it's about you too. Maybe you've been told you're worthless. Maybe someone tried to convince you that your past defines you, that your bloodline or mistakes make you less than others. But listen to me, that's a lie. You are not your pain. You are what you do with it. The world will test you in quiet ways. Maybe not with a briefcase full of money, but with smaller moments where you'll have to choose between easy and right. And in those moments, remember my story. Remember that even the most broken life can be rebuilt on truth. Before I end this story, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from tonight? Have you ever faced a moment that tested your honesty? A time when you had to choose between what's right and what's easy? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that redemption is real, no matter how lost you feel. Thank you for spending this time with me. Stay honest, stay hopeful, and as my mother once wrote, the truth always finds its way home. Good night, my friends. Owen.